From data addicts to strategic thinkers, Pathways Technology has pioneered path-breaking excellence in data analytics and business intelligence in Africa. Today at the Dajunigo Diaries, we are honored to host the CEO and President of Pathway Technologies, Joel Onditi, on our channel. Hello Joel, how are you?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm great. How are you?
Fine. Thank you so much for accepting our invite today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, so I think Joel, your journey is very inspiring, and it will be great to start, or rather to know from where you started. How was it growing up in Kisumu County?
Well, growing up for me was a normal experience, I would say. Normal in the sense that I'm the son of a teacher, right? My mom was a teacher, so maybe not so normal. Maybe I was lucky that I would get tea breaks. I would sneak into her classroom and get some tea. But otherwise, playing with friends, growing up, normal childhood experience.
Yeah. So you are very successful in the field of data and technology for Africa, but we're really keen to know, how does this passion come up? So maybe it will be great to start from your first job. Is there any aspect of your first job that prepared you for Pathways Technologies today? And did you ever foresee that coming?
That's an interesting question. I believe that where I'm at today is greatly shaped by the foundation of my career. So first of all, I'm a computer science major from JKUAT. That really gave me the foundation in data technology and innovation. My early career was with a software development company, local one here in Nairobi, Craft Silicon. And then I worked for Equity Bank after that. So my career started off really strongly in software, in data, in building solutions for businesses. And so that was the sort of the early stages of my career. Yeah.
Yeah, and Joel, at some point in Kenya, you actually quit your job to pursue a dream of pursuing a master's degree in the United States.
Yeah.
Contrary to many people, a lot of people would fear to lose their jobs and go for such a scary dream. What pushed you to that level?
That's another very interesting question, yeah. And it's interesting you said that, because my mother thought that I was really crazy to quit a job, a high-paying job at a bank at the time, and go to the US. So that was back in 2009, and of course it was during the recession, and everything had tanked, and I think in the US at the time it was a crisis with the housing market and everything else, and so it was definitely a crazy move for me. One thing about me, I would say, is that I'm very passionate about what I like. So at the time, I was definitely into software development. I was working for the bank, developing all kinds of good software. But then I had this really a lot of passion for data. I really wanted to pursue my dream of exploring how data can really help businesses and how we can really get value from data analytics, from data science, AI, machine learning, and all that. Interestingly, in my undergraduate, my project was around data mining algorithms. So I'd say from a very early age, I was really intrigued by how data can really give us insights that are not very obvious to the naked eyes. So I recall at the time, I looked around all over the world for a master's program that was very specific to data analytics, and I only found two options. One was University of Manchester and University of Denver. University of Manchester had a master's in, I think, computer science or something with a minor in data, and University of Denver had a pure master's in data analytics. And so I packed my bags and left and went for it.
Yeah, I think that is very interesting. We see somebody literally leaving their well-paying job, and in Africa that is very uncommon to find. But was it a better process in the US? I bet when you live in Kenya, you thought everything was done when you left for America? Is that what it was like during your master's studies?
Oh no, it was not a bed of roses, it was a bed of thorns and needles. Yeah. I left here, honestly, without a game plan, right? I had a partial scholarship. I knew that I would probably find my way around and pay for myself through college. What really helped me probably was that I was already a practicing professional. I was a software developer, so I knew that I had a skill to sell, even when I went to the US. But yeah, it was probably a story like any other, where you could get to the US, do some odd jobs in between. Hey, I came from being a senior technology, manager at Equity Bank, and went to work, IT support, at the university library, right? So of course, for me it was 3 steps back for a bunch of steps ahead. Yeah.
So what kept you moving during this moment? What was driving you to just be patient in the senior job? So what was the picture ahead?
That's a good question. I think for me, I'm a very passion-driven individual, and I always scout the opportunities, do my research, and then when I go for it, I go for it, right? So I knew that data analytics, data science was the future, right? And so when I was there in the thick of things, toiling through my graduate school, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So I didn't have any distractions. Times were hard. There's times when I thought maybe I should, quit halfway and go back home and look for a job and things like that. But I knew that this was it. There was temptation, like many people who go abroad, to veer into probably some easier careers. Probably a lot of guys going to healthcare because it's probably easier to find jobs and it's shorter training durations. But I stayed the course because I really knew that data was the future, right?
Yeah, I think that is very intentional of you, Joel. And what was it like after masters? So what did you do at the point where you have graduated? Did you want to come back to Kenya? Did you get a job in the United States?
Right. The good thing about the United States is it's a melting pot for all the knowledge, for all different cultures, and they are really keen on keeping good talent. So they have these programs where you go through graduate school, and if you graduate successfully, especially in STEM courses, they'll give you an opportunity to work, right? They'll give you a work permit and a visa and everything that you need. So I was fortunate enough to find my way into consulting, worked with some of the largest folks in big tech, Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, and did my consulting for about 3 years, at which point I then decided to go independent, right? So working consulting for 3 years in the US for me gave me a good rooting, a good foundation to really understand corporate America, one, to really get an experience working on large implementations, to really get a good grasp of how to come from ideation all the way to implementation on this large enterprise data and technology projects. Yeah.
Yeah, and looking at your experience at your first job in the United States, what are some of the lessons that you picked that actually set you up for the success at Pathways Technology today?
That's a really good question. The US is a different market, it's a different culture. Some of the lessons that I picked from the US, one of course is work ethic, right? In the US, people really believe in their jobs, they really get immersed in their work, and just a few small things that they do, for example, is, someone delivers a job and before they actually present it, they actually go through it to make sure it's really done well. So I really picked up that very quickly because the first couple of times you submit a job and then it has some mistakes, and everybody frowns at that, right? So you really understand that you have to be deep, you have to be purposeful, you have to be really thorough in your delivery, right? The second thing that I really picked up is teamwork and collaboration. A lot of the US-based, even the schooling and the academic systems, it's all collaboration. It's all teamwork, it's all what I bring to the table, what am I bringing to the table, a combined, effort, meant for a greater good, right? So I think those are some of the two main areas that I picked up working in the US.
Interesting. Work ethics, teamwork, and collaboration, very key for the success of any business venture. So Joel, let me walk us through your entrepreneurship journey. What actually inspired your passion for entrepreneurship?
So I believe I've always had a passion for entrepreneurship from very early days. I remember even back in grade school, I would try to sell things to my classmates and everything. I'm getting in trouble sometimes for that. But I've always had a knack for entrepreneurship. When I worked consulting in the US, I would look at the rates that they charge whenever they would send me out, for projects. I would lead an implementation and they would charge, $1,000, $800 an hour, for my time. And I said, wow, that's quite high. I bet there's a gap of people or companies that would love my services, but maybe cannot afford those rates. And so for me, that was already an opportunity. And so what I did was, I started Pathways International at the time in the US with the goal of providing data, technology, and innovation services to medium-sized organizations in the US. Now, to make that happen, of course, I teamed with a bunch of colleagues and partners to start that off. But to make the rates affordable, I opened the entity here in Nairobi. The goal for that was to provide cheaper labor. So we had what we call a dual delivery model, where we had a senior team in the US and the boots on the ground. A lot of the grinding work was done by the folks here in Kenya. That actually helped us a lot because we ended up building a very solid team here in Kenya that, of course, now started picking up the work culture, the collaboration aspects of the US working. But at the same time, we were able to provide very quality services to the folks, to our clients in the US.
This must have been a very scary step to take, Joel. Starting up a technology company in the United States. This is a third world country and they are pioneers in the technology. So how did you keep yourself going? What actually pushed you to say that I am coming from a developing country, but I can still come up with Pathways International in the United States and actually be successful in it?
Again, I think for me the big thing is just the belief. You believe in yourself and you go for it. In life you have to put down structures. You set a goal and then you work backwards, right? Begin with the end in mind and say, how do I achieve my goal? So number one, having the experience of consulting in the US, having the networks and folks who believe in my abilities was a contributing factor. So teaming up with a bunch of guys that have the networks as well in the US, and then bringing in the experience, or rather bringing in the aspect of more affordable labor from Africa, to cap it off. But to your point, I think Africa has a lot of talent, right? And I've been fighting this battle for the last 10 or so years in the US to say, we're not just marathon runners. We're not just Juakali artisans, right? We have a lot of talent. We have great things like M-Pesa coming out of the continent. We have some really, really high-tech talent, in the continent. And so I've really been pushing hard to make sure that this talent is recognized by the folks in the US. And a lot of our customers have really been amazed at the quality of work in technology that we've been able to deliver for them.
Amazing. So I see Pathways Technology coming in. And when did you set up Pathways International? And then started back in America. So you wanted to bring it back to Africa and sort of give back to your country, Kenya, I assume. What actually, or rather, how do you ensure that innovation still goes on in Pathways Technology?
Right, now that's a very good question. So the journey, as I've said, was Pathways International set up initially to support our US and Canadian customers, and then we set up the team in Nairobi to really support that business. That was a blessing in disguise for us because this team grew so well, they became so good that we started thinking, wait, this work can actually help the folks in the continent. And so a lot of companies started talking about data innovation within Africa, and approaching us and saying, hey, we have a data science project, we want to implement a data warehouse, can you help us? That made us really think and say, we believe there's an opportunity in Africa, right, for this. And so we started, I think about 2015, 16, we started doing a couple of projects in Africa, working with some of the large organizations locally, and we felt that there's momentum for this. So what I did was I partnered with an executive who had tons of experience leading companies in Africa, my partner Mr. Aswani, and then we said, it's time for us to take on the African market. Africa has a lot of challenges, from things like probably trade, financial inclusion, climate change. That's a global issue, and we thought that data technology and innovation could be the answer for all these challenges. So then our focus then became Africa, and as of I think a couple of weeks ago, we just launched officially Pathways Technologies with a focus on serving the African market. And our goal is two-pronged. One, for companies within Africa that really believe in data, technology and innovation to leverage our partnerships to grow. And then also for some of the social issues, trade, climate change, financial inclusion and all that, to really leverage some of our technologies for this. Right.
Yeah. So what do you think is derailing Africa's economic transformation? A lot of people say there is a huge space in science, technology and innovation, and that is where also data comes in. So what do you think, or rather what do you see as the future of Africa as far as data and technology is concerned?
That's a really good question. So I wouldn't necessarily say derailing. I would say I'm a believer in the process. I believe in trusting the process. So I would say that we are walking the journey, right? Look at economies like the US, 200 plus years, right? They've walked the journey, they're still walking the journey, right? We're walking the journey. I think we're actually walking it fast because, again, I'd like to quote M-Pesa as one of the best known innovations out of Africa. Yeah. That is a really good innovation out of Africa. Financial inclusion, banking. Prior to M-Pesa, probably a big percentage of Africa wasn't banked, but now with M-Pesa, they're all banked. So I would say that the future of Africa is data, technology, and innovation. I keep repeating those three words because that is the mantra, the foundation of Pathways Technologies. So what I believe is that organizations and companies need to really look at their processes, really look at their operations, and say, are we maximizing technology? Are we looking at our data and looking for insights that can help us to grow ourselves? Governments, are governments looking at their processes, their service offerings to the people, and then are they leveraging technology to the best of their abilities? Yeah.
Joe, we see a lot of international students going to seek further studies outside of their countries, and they are normally faced with a puzzle of whether to start working in those countries or to come back home and start their own company. I know your story is sort of a mixture of both, but how do you think they can navigate this decision?
Well, I believe everybody has their story, right? And you cannot replicate someone else's story. What I'd like to say about international students getting out there is, know what you want, right? We have big engineers in some of the largest companies out there. I have a friend, a very close Kenyan friend, who works for Boeing, for example, and he's a success story in his own right? So what I'd say is, know your purpose, know what you're trying to look for, and then go for it. But of course, as someone who's come back home, I'd like to urge a lot of the folks who are out there doing these big things for the large companies out there is, I'd like to urge them to come back because there's an opportunity to grow Africa, and there will be very key ingredients in the growth of Africa. Yeah.
We are drawing towards the end of the interview with Joel Onditi, the CEO and President of Pathways Technologies. And now I would like to know, Joel, what advice do you have for a young generation of entrepreneurs?
What advice do I have? That's a very good question. A tough one at that matter, because I don't like seeing myself as an expert in advice. Again, like I said, everybody walks their journey. But my advice to the young fellows probably still in school trying to figure out their careers is, we live in a world where technology has taken over, right?
Yeah.
In anything that you do, in any profession that you're in, think of how technology can be applied in that profession, right? We live in a world where things like AI and machine learning and data analytics are ubiquitous, right? If you're an accountant, you still need to know how to analyze your data. If you're a farmer, you still need to know how to analyze your data to really succeed, right? So we live in that world where technology is really key in everything that we do. So I'd like to urge everyone to look at what they're doing and research out there. Go to Google, information is everywhere nowadays, and research how can I apply technology in my field. The last point probably I'd say is, let us trust in the process. Even as we do innovations, I like to quote one of my professors at MIT that said that there's two kinds of innovation. There's innovation with an uppercase I and innovation with a lowercase I. Now the challenge is that I think a lot of people are looking for innovation with an uppercase I. Now what's that innovation? That is the big innovation that will shape the world. That is your Facebook and your Twitter and all that, right?
Yeah.
Now those are very few and far between, right? But the innovation with the lowercase I is that small incremental change that you're going to cause every single day, right? If I can, if I can create a process to take a couple of minutes shorter than it would have, that is innovation with a lowercase I. So let us look for the small innovations and keep growing, and that's for the companies too and organizations. Let us not chase that big, large, earth-shaking innovation that will take forever to come.
Interesting. Joel, just to take you back a little bit, we see Pathways Technologies being born out of Pathways International. Along the journey, what are some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you navigate the challenges?
Oh, lots of challenges, I must say. Running a business is not easy. There's always challenges along the way.
Yeah.
So I think for us, because we are running, we're pushing very cutting-edge solutions. It's been two-pronged. One, in the US, for example, part of our challenge was that we were a small fish playing in a very big pool, right? And then we are also pushing Africa as a global delivery center. Folks there they know the US and they know India, probably a little bit of some Eastern Europe, right? So some of the challenges were just selling ourselves, right, and saying Africa is the place to go for technology, right? Coming back here locally for Pathways Technologies, some of the challenges have been, again, trying to shift the mindset of local organizations and saying technology can really work. You walk into a room and find a CEO who's been running a company for 30, 40 plus years, and they're looking at this young guy saying, you want to teach me how to run my business? And I go, no, I don't want to teach you how to run your business. I'll just show you some ways that you can use technology to run your business better, right? So I think those are some of the challenges that we faced along the way, but we thank God that we've been able to weather the challenges. We are still pushing. We really hope to create an impact in Africa by using data technology and innovation to essentially make the world a better place, right? Bring better financial inclusion, through some of our innovation like credit scoring, right? And we are doing all that we can. Currently, we are, I think, the only certified Microsoft partner in data and AI, because we believe in data and AI, and that is the future. So challenges will always be there, but we're staying in and staying strong. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Begin from the end in mind. Trust in yourself, trust in the process, and believe in yourself. John, what is the one last greatest lesson you'd like to give, or what is the one greatest lesson you've learned from your entire journey, from being a student, from working in Kenya, from quitting your job to moving to the United States, and now you're back in Kenya? What is the one thing that has kept you going?
What has kept me going is just trusting the process and knowing that it's not going to be easy. Trust the process, be the best in what you do, and everything else will fall in place.
Thank you so much. much, Joel. We have come to the close of the interview with Dajo Diaries, and I am your host, Juliet Oloch. Just before you go, if you are a young entrepreneur and wondering where you want to start, trust in the process. Thank you so much. I have been your host, Juliet, and this is Joel Onditi from Pathways Technology Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you, Joel.
Pleasure.